Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. We're so pleased to have you with us today. Welcome to our webinar. We're entitling it Living Life, Changing the Conversation Around Aging. And we're going to have a really great discussion today. My name is Jennifer Thomas, and I'm Managing Director of Plug and Play Health in the U.S. And just a little bit of context on Plug and Play before we get started. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley. What we do across the company is to connect the world's best startups with our national and global partners, corporate partners, and really helping them bring technology and innovation to market faster. We do this in almost every industry worldwide, but when it comes to healthcare, we're specifically looking to address the needs to improve the patient experience, improve patient outcomes, and even enhance the provider experience. So we accomplish this by running accelerators, and we have a fall accelerator program launching in September. This webinar is officially part of that. And these are 12-week programs that we do in 36 locations around the world. Our anchor partners get to choose the startups that are selected, and pretty soon we'll be unveiling those selected for the fall. We also assist our corporate partners in their innovation efforts, helping them to scout and discover and to test drive the right startups that can really enhance their ability to innovate, invest, find new revenue opportunities that will advance their businesses. And we do this for 500 corporations worldwide. And then finally, we're an investor. We focus on early stage, seed, and Series A global startups. We invest in about 200 startups per year. And we recently invested in Redi Health, who will be presenting today, sort of the second half of the event. So please stay tuned. For the agenda, we have about a 45-minute panel discussion with live Q&A, so please get your questions ready. Make sure you drop those in the Q&A area. And then we have 3 startups that will be presenting. They're in kind of in the aging space: HeyRenee, Redi Health, and Cognetivity. So use the chat and the Q&A button. Stay on mute if you're not speaking, please. But let's kick it off. I'd like to welcome our panelists to the stage now. Great, see them all coming on. Awesome, we have Alan Goldstein. He's Managing Director at P&G Ventures. We have Vera Maljkovic. She's Principal Research Scientist in Cognition and Behavior at Eli Lilly. And we have Ken Smith, Director of Mobility at the Stanford Center on Longevity. So welcome to our panelists. Make sure.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Great to be here.
Hello, great to be here.
Great to have you guys. This is going to be such an exciting conversation. So today we're going to talk about 3 basic topics around aging: changing the conversation and our approach to aging, the technology that can really enhance our ability to proceed with gusto, and examples of changes people can make in their lives so that they can live long and healthy lives. So I'm going to start off with the first question. We've entitled this webinar, Changing the Conversation on Aging, with the understanding that we're using long terminology. So I'd like to ask each of you, each of our guests, to enlighten us on how we should be approaching this topic in an open-minded way. And Alan, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. You've spent your career developing, designing, and marketing consumer-centric products with a concentration on innovation, and you really helped build up P&G's products in the aging market. You're now running P&G Ventures, which is the startup studio within P&G focused on innovation in consumer products, where P&G doesn't previously have products. So can you share your ideas about staying in the game of life versus aging as a series of losses?
Sure. So first, Jennifer, thanks for having me, and it's great to be here with Ken and Vera. Really looking forward to this conversation and talking this space. So let me just start by talking just a second around P&G Ventures. So we are not an investment arm of the company, but we are chartered to create new businesses that are outside of the core of what the company does. And we do that by collaborating with amazing entrepreneurs and startups around the world in new areas, things like medicated skin, menopause, active aging. So things that and areas that the company's not in, as I just said, but really where there's significant changes going on in society and at the consumer interface, right? So P&G is a very consumer-focused company, and we're really looking at creating new jobs and enabling people to live their lives differently and more fulfillingly. So this space and this topic is very, I think, close to almost everybody, right? So either we're aging, we have aging parents, it's pretty complex. As you said, I think society views this and a lot of people experience this as a series of losses as people continue to age. And I think the opportunity is sitting in front of us as we look at how industries are significantly changing, whether it's healthcare, the digital age obviously is impacting everything, wellness, et cetera. So I really like to think about things as, staying in the game, number one. And number two, how do you kind of take a step back and think about life kind of end to end? And I know Ken will talk about this, but, historically, we as society just think about aging as maybe the last 30 years of our lives, right? We live our entire life for this, quote, golden age, when we retire and we go and I guess settle back and kind of watch things happen around us. I think there's a great opportunity, as I just said, kind of staying in the game, right? And thinking about it more holistically. And that's what P&G Ventures is all about. We think of active aging as a category, a business unit someday. Not there yet. But just like we have, fabric care and fem care and these other things, there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of underserved consumers' needs. Where one example is our brand that's pretty nascent called Kindra, which really addresses menopause, right? Huge topic. Nobody's talking about it. It's a 10-year plus journey for women. And most doctors don't really have a solution except for maybe a hormonal patch, right? And there's a lot more going on there. So how do we serve consumers in different ways? On the other side, men's health. As men continue to age, needs are changing. And how do you continue to open up opportunities for them so that it's not just, stay at home longer, but it's living life more fully.
And Alan, you've talked about it also as a series of one-way doors. That's the way we see it. You walk through the door, it shuts, you can't get back. And so what we're going to, sort of really dig into in this conversation is how we can really change that thought process of our, the way that we've been trained to think about it. That you're basically, life is over at 65, you go travel as long as you can, hang on. and then you move on.
I think I think this is the opportunity to change the conversation, right? Because if you think about as you age, you have this window, you're doing everything and loving life. But then maybe you have a health issue. Maybe you need some extra help at home, right? Maybe I can't drive now, right? So there are different things that happen just from the natural process of aging, where ultimately, people die, right? But how do you kind of think about this rather than one-way doors, as I say, but more of opportunities, right? Because there's not only kind of the psychological side of it, which is beyond physical changes and psychological changes, but as you kind of progress, social isolation is a big deal, right? Because if you think about somebody who's aging, whether it's personal loss or friends or your parents' friends, right? As people kind of start to pass, starts to be pretty lonely, even if you're surrounded by family, right? So how do we change that? And there's no reason that needs to be, right? We have the infrastructure, we have support systems. We just need to bring them forward and leverage technology to enable a lot of this to happen.
That's great. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Ken, because so you've been at the Center for Longevity now for 12 years. As you say, you're not an academic, but you're trained as a mechanical engineer. And the center has this mission to accelerate and implement scientific discoveries, technological advances, behavioral practices, and social norms. I'd love you to talk about those social norms too, so that century-long lives, as you're saying, 100 years, are healthy and rewarding. So the question I have to you is, what does it look like when we're all shooting to live to 100? And so how do we reframe this vision?
Well, thank you, Jennifer. And like Ellen, I'm happy to be on this panel. I think this is a great conversation, and it's right in the wheelhouse of the Center on Longevity. So we are, by the way, a research center at Stanford University that, as you said, is really looking to reframe the conversation around aging and to bring all of this research that goes on all over Stanford and all these individual departments to bear kind of through this lens of what happens when you suddenly have a society that the norm is a 100-year life. So, as you said, I guess there's a kind of two answers to your question here in terms of how we change this conversation. And I think the first might be changing the way we think about it from aging to long lives. If we look back, I mean, in the last 100 years, we've essentially doubled life expectancy at birth. We've gone from about 47 in the US to maybe 80, 82 or so. And if you think about that, that is an amazing accomplishment. And it's happened in what essentially is the blink of an eye. Laura Karstensen, who's the director of our center, often says that, we have added more years of life expectancy in the last 100 years than the rest of all of human millennia combined, right? And yet the societies and the conventions that we live by, frankly, just can't keep up that fast, right? So we end up with this mismatch where we still have the mindset that we're born, we go to school during a certain short period, we have a work life that starts and ends very definitively, maybe somewhere around 65, you retire and you go off, like Alan says, and do something, either completely different or not much at all. But if you think about that, if you now thought that you were expanding lifespan by 30 or 40 years, what we are doing effectively is adding them all on at the end, right? We're adding them all to old age, which is probably the last place, if you asked everybody where they would want to add more years to their life,
right.
That wouldn't necessarily be the choice, right?
Except
so I
don't
think
want everyone saying college because that's going to cost a lot for us. But I get the point for sure.
well, that's a whole different discussion about college and the cost of college. But I think what I'm trying to say is just that what we're trying to look at is really not so much what happens after you turn 55 or 65, but what happens all along this journey of life, and how do all of those things tend to accumulate over life and lead to positive or negative life outcomes. I mean, we've just actually are getting ready. If this was a month in the future, I would point to a link, but we're just getting ready to actually publish the results of what's been about a 2.5-year project that we're calling a new map of life. And what we did is tried to back off and take that white sheet of paper and said, where would we look at making changes based on this assumption of 100-year lives? And we went off and we hired 9 different researchers, most of them postdocs, a couple of MDs, to look into various domains. And they're very different domains. It's not aging, it's early childhood and education and built environment and financial security and lifestyle. And to dig kind of deeply into the science and to say, what do we know about what affects these long life outcomes? And then where then are the kind of high leverage points or the low hanging fruit that we might want to go in and try to get our society better adjusted, to the idea of a 100-year life.
We'll have to make sure we keep tabs on that, the publication of that study, and you can send it to me and I'll share it with anyone who attended today.
Absolutely. I'll put it'll always be on our website, which is longevity.stanford.edu. But just to close the thought, I mean, I think since we are talking to a group of entrepreneurs and developers, if you start to think about that long life, you open up a much broader field of areas that you can work in and opportunities that present themselves than just sort of looking at that last part of life. And so I think that's one of the ways you could really change this conversation significantly.
I love that. I love that sort of really stretching it out and thinking about 100 years rather than just the 65. So Vera, as a research scientist, you're an experimental psychologist, you're someone who understands cognitive behavior, and you're kind of bringing together the science behind our behavior and the digital tools that could improve our cognition. So why is it so important to approach aging from this opportunistic example, and give us a little bit of insight about what you're doing there at Eli Lilly? Oh, you're on mute, Vera. Sorry. Vera, you're still on mute. Can you unmute? Yeah, thank you.
I am sorry.
No problem.
My thanks to you and to Alan and Ken for really expanding my horizons. As you know, at Eli Lilly, we have a commitment to working with some prevalent and really difficult chronic conditions in life in general. I think that when it comes to aging, and some of those, of course, either come with aging, like dementia, or they're exacerbated with aging, like the diabetes can be. What I think a key piece here is engagement of people, as have been mentioned by both Alan and Ken. The world is changing at a pace that we have never seen. Right. So, and I was recently struck to find out that there was just about 100 years from the first flight that the Wright brothers made. And look where we are now. I mean, that to me is just incredible. Another area, of course, where the things have changed humongously has been medicine in general. And so the domains, the emotional domains and the life domains that we are working in are still the same. So, so from childhood, we learn, we grow up, we look for a mate, we work, we raise families, we help raise grandchildren potentially, we have a social life, we have a cultural life. But all of that is very different than it was just a generation ago. And so in order to keep up with these changing, because we can't just learn something and then stay with it, because the world is changing, in order to sort of keep doing this at the level that we would like to doing it, we need to be cognitively flexible and we need to keep learning. And so I think this is where just kind of bringing together these emotional needs and wants of people, and bringing the tools that are going to help us, stay connected. Again, we mentioned, the danger of being lonely. So staying connected with others through technology, being able to maybe visit places that one either cannot or for whatever reason visit and learn about them. We can go and, walk through the streets of a city through Google Maps, and which we have never been able to do. We can go see museums and so on. And of course, there are actually really basic ones that are saving us time, that are making life easier for us, like, online banking, GPS, and so on. So all of those things are actually helping us reduce the effort of doing some of the things that we don't necessarily kind of look forward to, but really increase our chances to do things that we can. But we do need to stay active, and we need to be able to keep learning. And I think this is where the digital technologies are tremendously effective and really helpful, and are actually keeping our minds fresh, but constantly giving us these new opportunities and motivating us to do new things.
Yeah, I love that, staying cognitively flexible. And things are changing so fast. I mean, the developments in technology are changing faster than, we even know how to keep up. But we know that they can help advance our ability to age well and to stay well. So, Ken, I'd like to start with you on this one. You've said that innovating for longevity does not equal innovating for old age. So can you address how technology should play a part in those choices and in that aging? And like what will contribute to the long and healthy life, that the century lives that you talk about?
Sure. That's a very small, tiny little niche question. Huh? I mean, it's a very, you're asking essentially about, life, which is what makes it sometimes difficult to get it down to the actionable. But I
Or if
think,
I could narrow it for you and say that you have talked about the make me care kind of technology.
yeah,
So
well, okay. So I think let me dig in here. So I think it starts by thinking about what you mean by aging well, right? And if you consider that what contributes to long, healthy lives tends to be this accumulation of choices that we make along the way and the environments that we're subject to along the way. And by the way, I do want to say that it's important to think about the environments you're subject to instead of just personal choice, because there's a lot of our society that doesn't necessarily have the personal choices that you'd like them to make to have their most healthy lives. And so as much as we can alter the environment to make that the natural way to live, the healthy way to live, that's going to help things. But I guess if you're thinking about what sort of things I'm talking about in terms of living longer well, I mean it's a bunch of things. I mean it's things like changes to the built environment that are going to more naturally encourage activity and keep people moving in a way that doesn't require special shoes and a gym membership. I think it's also those same places helping to isolate people from the kind of negative influences that can impact their long life. How close you build a building to a highway, air pollution, lead paint that tends to be in a lot of older buildings. I think it's the technologies that are going to allow you to move in and out of a work life. I think, we talked about Alan's closing doors. I think that's a paradigm that needs to change. And we need to be building sort of on-ramps and off-ramps for people. If they're going to have these longer careers, then it's got to be much more normal for people, maybe to take a side detour to spend some time raising the family, then coming back in, and then maybe as they're getting older, changing to a different work schedule or a type of work that they're doing. Health technologies are sort of an obvious one, but I would say we should be trying to target as much as we can health span rather than lifespan.
and
I
voice,
think,
we talked about voice as well, voice being a really key piece of technology for the aging population.
yeah, I mean, I think as much as we can, I think we want to try to be building these solutions around things that are more mainstream technologies instead of tiny little individual point solutions. And so I think voice is a great example of something that has gone mainstream for all of society, but becomes a wonderful interface because it's much more natural. It's it overcomes a lot of issues that people have interfacing with technologies and smartphones, and yet it doesn't stigmatize the people that are using it to say, well, I'm using old person technology, right? I think we've seen over and over again that things that are built specifically as old person technology tend to be less successful than things that are integrated into sort of general technology that are really good for older people.
Right. Alan, I might jump to you on this one just because of Ken's segue here. You have talked about every day there are more people above 65 getting online than there are people being born, and how that plays into technology and the right way to approach it. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's beyond 65 as, how do we leverage technology to kind of increase our vitality of life overall, right? So I think, there's a couple of things. As you age, there's physiological changes that just naturally happen, right? Your endocrine system changes, arches kind of fall, your center of gravity shifts, your body needs more protein as you age. But then how do we take technology and how do we enable people in a non-threatening way, right? So, a lot of this is designing with people, so it's very intuitive, to understand and kind of open up the door of self-care a bit, right? And I think it's really interesting as you think about healthcare, things like Lilly's doing and everybody else, amazing stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that we can do and we're going to do, and it's going to happen naturally, right? The interface between self and health will be really interesting. Like, when do I need to go to a doctor and when don't I? Today, people only go to a doctor when they're not feeling well, right? And there's a lot we can do, a lot on, I'm going to call the word home diagnostics, but monitoring things, measuring things. So, we're not far off, and I'm running lots of experiments in my own home around swabbing, peeing, poking, and getting information, and then action, right? So it's really interesting. We think about, the supplement world. How many people take vitamins and supplements just because they kind of should, versus imagine the day where you take some measurements and you find out maybe your cortisol level's high, maybe you're a little bit more dehydrated, and then recommendation of things that you should be doing, right? Because a lot of this is all very connected, right? I'll just, hydration, right? That's an area that we are actively going after. This is not kind of the Gatorade sports drink, right? As you age, your needs are very different. Most people don't realize drinking water is not a very good hydrant. There are other ways to get your body hydrated. Most of us don't go, gosh, I'm dehydrated, right? We're either fatigued, we have a lack of energy, maybe we have muscle cramping, maybe we have headaches, right? It manifests itself in different ways. And so how do you help people along that journey, leveraging technology, right, to inform us, educate us, and help us manage kind of our well-being before you hit that wall of, oh my God, something's wrong, I need to go to the doctor.
But then on the flip side, you guys have talked about how people of a certain age don't want to be monitored all the time. They're not crazy about, like having a camera watch them, or having to check in all the time. How do we deal with those issues?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting dilemma, right? Because as you age, people get more involved with your lives, right? Whether it's a child, a caregiver, a neighbor, right? And through our research, it was pretty interesting. We were down a journey where we thought kind of fall prevention was like the holy grail, right? And everybody goes, oh yeah, oh my God, that'd be amazing to know if mom or dad was going to fall prior to that happening, right? Because everybody knows that kind of story. But if you talk to mom and dad, they're not really that interested in that, right? So instead of, problem solution when that happens, how do you get mom and dad more involved in caring for themselves? Kind of, I call it staying in the game. Think of it as the democratization of PT, right? So you think about whether it's exercising, whether it's enhancing your muscle needs, as muscles need more protein, bounce, maybe it's classes, right, that are more around bounce versus jazzercise or Peloton classes, right? So there's a lot there to unpack, certainly beyond this conversation, but it's much less about like monitoring. I mean, there's a lot of technology. We can do that. We can do that with the privacy issues on hand, which is a whole nother topic. But if you really focus on like the consumer's needs, it's a little bit different than that, right?
I always love going back to Ken's comment he made, make me care enough to use the technology, not just so that, my child can monitor me to make sure I don't fall. Vera, I want to jump over to you for a second, because a lot of what you're doing, you're developing, evaluating, implementing digital technology, whether it's sensors or devices or methods, to aid in the diagnosis and treatment of some of these more serious diseases like dementia, diabetes. How can technology be used for longevity as a defense for chronic illness, for example? Maybe like with early detection.
So there are actually there is a common theme, I think, to most of these, most of the chronic diseases. But one of the important ones is just being connected to one's doctor. What we know is that it's quite difficult to get a full picture of a person in a short, and we know the short doctor's appointments are just getting ever shorter, in a really short appointment, and that that particular assessment can be affected by many different things. And so being able to actually collect information via digital devices, be it active cognitive testing, or by getting information from different sensors that are on the body and so on, and being able to make sure that those are relevant information and they go to the doctor. So there is just a much better picture. The doctor doesn't have to spend time getting this information, and he can also be, or he or she can be assured that this information is in fact relevant to what they're doing. They can take it seriously. So this kind of integration, first of all, being able to do this, and secondly, integrating so that the doctor can get the better information about the person and be able then to know what to suggest and not to prescribe to a person is a really important part, this integration of the person's health and a healthcare system. Then in terms of just digital information, there are three different things, three different sort of areas that we can be thinking of. So one is just assessment, right? So if we're thinking dementia, one of the key pieces that we always have to go to is cognitive assessment, particularly when it's happening early on. And we know that dementia start, in particular Alzheimer's, starts much, much longer, maybe 15 to 20 years before we actually get to see any symptoms. So cognitive tests are going to be extremely important. And to the extent that we can do this easily and at home, and again, without distractions, without being afraid of, being sort of nervous about being in the office and that affecting our performance and so on. This is something that can be done really well, also potentially more frequently and so on, and more fully, because again, doctors don't really have the time. We also just don't have enough doctors in many of these branches to be able to get at, everybody that needs a proper assessment. The second piece is the impact on function. So regardless of the disease that we are looking at, a chronic disease and the treatment of that disease, what we know is that it's not just giving people something, it's actually making sure that the person's life is improved. So what we call a function, it's not just, can I solve a test better? Because we know our brains have not evolved to solve to do cognitive tests, but they've evolved to solve real problems in the world. And so what we want to make sure is that a person can actually stay active longer, be independent longer, have fewer trips to the hospital and so on. So the function is really important. And that is something that digital devices and the sensors are really pretty much the only thing that can give us that, because we cannot be asking people to continually give us information. We need something that's passive and that we can just put on a person, or, we can record different things. This is a scientific challenge, without a doubt. I think we're still ways to go, and there is going to be a large involvement from all sides here, both from small and large companies as well as academics, in being able to understand how that works and to get it going forward. But a really important piece of what actually we can get with these. And then finally, help with treatment. There are already many apps out there that can, some of them purport to help, some of them are some of them are just starting, not all of them are equally good and so on. But there is this, I think, momentum and understanding of why this is important. And there are many ways and how we can actually select the ones. So FDA has cleared some and actually even approved a few. The particular different groups, for example, US Pain Foundation actually recommends certain apps to help people monitor and their pain symptoms and educate them and so on. And there are apps actually that can help actually handle even the some of the cognitive behavioral therapy aspects, and that really work. And so I think, again, so those three aspects, the assessment, the impact on function and how that helps us actually improve our function, and then this digital therapeutics, which actually either supplement or might be able to stand on their own. I think those are the three kind of things that we are, I think they're going to grow tremendously. And of course, the details are going to depend on a particular disease, but this would be true for most of the diseases that we're dealing with, particularly the chronic ones, right, where we really have to track these symptoms and get help over a long period of time.
Got it. And just to kind of close out our conversation on technology, I just wonder from all three of you, do you think the consumer will drive the changes as the consumer has driven the younger population of consumers have really driven the changes in technology? Do you think this age group will be driving the change, or will it kind of come at them? Just your opinion on that.
I think it's both. Right. So I think often we as a society don't know what technology is capable of until you have it in your hands. Right. I mean, I'll date myself, but nobody wanted a glass phone. Right. We knew all the reasons why an iPhone or a Samsung would be bad. We drop it, it'd break, etc. And now we have a computer in our pocket and most people can't live without it. I think the data side is fascinating. Right. So I read a stat recently in the year 2020, we generated 40 times the amount of data every single day than there are stars in our universe, right? So it's incredible. And I think that's going to drive a lot, especially as AI starts to get more refined. I think we can get to more predictive states, right? Which will be fascinating. But I do also think there's a clear distinction between health and medical and technology and kind of self and wellness. And I think it's a fine line, and it's a dance that we're going to need to learn. I saw in the chat, concerns around misdiagnosis and things like that. When I talk about self-care, I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, right? One of the tricks is going to be, when do I need to go to the doctor? Beyond, I don't feel well, and often you've crossed over and it's a crisis mode. Right. So I think that's all pretty fascinating.
Yeah, Alan, if I can jump in on that, I think one of the things we are desperately missing is a definition of health span. Right now, and part of it's just because it's always easier to manage lifespan and it is to manage sickness than it is to manage wellness, right? So how do you go to a doctor and then the doctor, says, well, nothing's wrong with you. How does she know how to make you more healthy? Right. And I think right now we are definitely missing that measurement. To Jennifer's question, I mean, I agree with you that it is a balance between push and pull on the technology and whether the consumers will demand it. But one thing we can do is be better in terms of our market research than saying, okay, we're designing for over 65. Right. I mean, we can that over 65 population is as diverse or more diverse than, most of the other groups of population that we look at as markets. And so I do think we have to bring products to them that are appealing. Jennifer, you mentioned a couple of times that I have a make me care comment. And just to fill that in, is that we've done some work on technology with people over 80. And we sort of started out with the premise of, will older people accept new technologies? And I think in short, the answer is they will, but they have a higher bar than young people for taking the time and the effort to learn those technologies. And you really do have to make those folks understand the value before they're just going to jump in and try the next new thing.
And just to jump in there and then leave it to Vera, we talk about irresistible superiority in our world of Procter. You really do need to be developing solutions for people, consumers, that once they use them, they never want to go back, right? Because that's really what's going to disrupt or change the game.
I mean, I totally agree. I think that's sort of when I started off, I said it's all about engagement. And I think, again, it's going to be a push and pull. I mean, we didn't know, the famous Steve Jobs, these people don't know what they want, they will want it once it's given to them. And I think, that sense of, the good design, the intuitive features and so on, and that engagement. So if something lets people be engaged in a way that's easy and intuitive and it makes their life richer, I think that is where that's going to be, to the extent that we see older people today who have children who are and this is my sort of personal observation, so it's N of maybe 5 or 6, but I'm going to sort of, even as a good scientist, I'm going to throw this out and then ask everybody else to think about who they know. The people who have children and grandchildren are more likely to do this because they want to talk to their grandkids, and the only way they get to do this is via Zoom or FaceTime or whatever else. And so that kind of, so let's marry these kind of general, needs to stay connected and so on, and let's get people engaged and let's use that. And then of course, let's make it as intuitive as possible. I think that the success of some of these, both the devices as well as the apps, are exactly about their intuitive nature and just how easy it is and how much pleasure they bring people. So it is going to be a push and pull. And of course, we're aging. So current generations, that are used to this are already know how they're doing. So they're not starting from zero. So we're not talking about today's 80-year-olds who haven't had a chance to use them and have to learn from scratch. We're talking about, people who have already been. So in a couple of decades, I think almost many people will have that, of course, depending on where you live and so on. I'm sitting here talking about the people who have been exposed, but generally speaking, I think, the technology has been around for long enough that people have some sense and at least feel more comfortable learning new things. But that engagement, I think, is going to be absolutely key.
And that's one of the silver linings, I think, to the pandemic, right? The ability, although it's brutal, right? People are FaceTiming more. And that's the piece I hope that people hang on to. And we as a society start to provide more broader access to people, right? Because not everybody has broadband, right? We take that kind of for granted. That's a big piece, is access to technology to help have that big impact. And even the difference between a phone call versus, seeing your parents or your grandkids, right? And you're very much part of the day-to-day if you're not living like with them or in the same community even. So I think that's a great aspect of advancements of technologies.
I just, we didn't really get to our third question about what you can do to stay in the game, but I know that each of you have like 3 bullets or 2 bullets that are must-haves. Maybe we want to go around quickly, then I'd love to get to some of the questions. We got a lot of questions coming in. Maybe Ken, I know you have a couple of bullets, like what you have to do to stay in the game.
Well, I think, I think there's a lot of it, as Vera said, is about engagement. I think you have to have a purpose in life, right? And I think whether that's, your purpose is work or your purpose is family or your purpose is, your religious community. I think you gotta have that. I think that building physical movement into your life in a natural way is just something that, if there's a saying that if exercise was a pill, it's one of the most effective pills that we have. It's absolutely free. Everybody can have it, and we have a real adherence problem to this medication. Yeah. So I think it's staying connected, it's staying active, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Alan?
So agree 100% with what Ken said. I think, community, I think there's an individuality aspect, right? So, I spend a lot of time with startups and entrepreneurs, and I always talk about where are you on your journey, and everybody's unique and individual in what's going on, even though there are common themes. I think people are on a journey as well, right? I always talk about, age isn't a number. We love to tag, and we've done it ourselves. We've fallen into the trap, 65, 55, 8, right? 80. If you think about aging, I always think about 3 vectors. One is degree of independence or degree of dependency, right? And you go from completely independent to maybe a little bit of dependency to a lot of dependency in life. I think there's a degree of mobility, right? How active you are plays a big role on that. Ken just talked about exercise, right? How do you stay active and stay mobile, recognizing as you age, the majority of us aren't going to be running marathons, but just taking walks and things like that. So mobility. And then the third one is degree of cognition, right? And that, I think we're very much in the nascent state as a society of understanding the brain, understanding cognitive states, dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. So I really think about those three dimensions of the aging process, and then managing that on an individual basis with obviously not only yourself, but your medical care and your professionals.
Vera, do you have any?
Yeah, so again, in a healthy body, healthy mind, right? So exercise, good diet, absolutely critical. Sleep, another piece we haven't mentioned, but incredibly important. And actually getting worse as we get older. Sleep gets worse, and it has, the problems with sleep are consequence of certain disease. The certain chronic diseases will impair sleep, but sleep also will actually have cause some of the cognitive decline as well. So there is sort of a bi-directional influence there. So sleep, incredibly important, and that social connection. And there are a couple of major studies that are still ongoing. One started at Harvard in 1939, and it's still ongoing, and it's just about well-being. And those are exactly the things that people are looking at. Don't smoke, don't drink, exercise, eat well, and so on. Don't be obese. And incredibly importantly, have a good marriage and have a good social life. And finger, which is a more recent study started in Sweden, which is actually, so this is about just aging, but this is about people who are at risk for dementia. And so they have active interventions to help those people stay well. And again, the same sort of pieces, and they show that it does help. And so exercise has been shown, it's not just for itself, but actually help brain function. We know that with exercise, hippocampal connectivity actually improves, and hippocampus is one of the key structures that helps our memory, and so on. So there's been some incredibly exciting research in neuroscience that shows how exercise is important. And so again, healthy body, healthy mind, and stay connected with your friends and sleep well.
Cool. We have only 3 minutes left, I think, but some very cool questions. If you're inclined to answer any of them in the chat, please do. But I thought this one was interesting. The solutions and technology seem fragmented right now. Will they become more coherent or coordinated as they stand? They're kind of point solutions, less impact when they're a la carte. Can I have maybe one person quick comment on that, and then I'll move to another question? Who wants to take that one? Ken?
I'll take a shot. I mean, I think it's when we realize that these things that we're calling aging technologies become mainstream. I mean, I think it's when this stuff all becomes integrated into normal society as opposed to being this thing apart. Then I think some of these things start to come together, because the questioner is absolutely right. Right now, there's these sort of point solutions everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll just add to that. I think we as society don't buy technologies, we buy solutions, right? And the more, these great innovators start to think about like the job they're trying to solve versus the technology, I think that will also have a big uptake. If you're truly solving a job, right, that is not being met, I think that'll step change the adoption.
Got it. Here's one. Attendee is wondering whether you have a top few devices for patients to adopt. Any suggestions that you can think of?
So I think about consumers, not patients, but we're all the same.
Okay.
I think something to communicate, right? So whether it's an iPhone, whether it's some of the Facebook things or the Amazon things, right? The ability to connect with people when you can't get out of your house and be there.
Yeah.
I think that's one really important one.
Got it.
In the space of, of wearable kind of technologies, I'm a fan of things that are very unobtrusive. One of my favorites is the Oura Ring from that perspective. You can wear it 24/7. You can shower with it. It tells you about your sleep, which Vera pointed out is a big thing. So I think things that just sort of fade into the background and they're there when you want them.
Yeah.
And we're just on the crest of wearables, because wearables isn't about steps.
Right.
It's so much more than that, right? And it's information for you and I, but someday it's going to be information for our doctors, right? There's going to be a seamless communication there.
Yeah. And we don't want many wearables. We just want one, right? That's also a question. And then, there's also issues on collecting data. I'm sorry, we don't have time for all these interesting questions. We need a full hour next time. I think that maybe we'll end it by, sort of having you guys just maybe give some closing remarks. Just, where should we go next from here? What are you really excited about? Let me ask you that. Let's start with Vera. Vera, what are you really excited about?
I am incredibly excited about the potential to actually understand fully a person and help them in a way that just hasn't been possible before in terms of patients. So let me just give you one example of chronic pain, right? We give a person a pill and we just say, how much pain do you have? And that's what we go on. What we can now do with the kinds of sensors and devices that we have is that we will be able, well, we now have them, but we'll still have some work to get done, but it will be possible to actually understand how people function socially when they're in pain, how they function physically when they're in pain, and so on. And what we can do from that is actually at least help them improve their function. And so be able to have insight and to be able to plan and to pace their activity so that they can improve their function, to be able to be educated and to get some cognitive behavioral therapy altered device. And I think, given just, and this is just one example of just a huge impact of pain in our society. It's almost 2/3 of $1 trillion a year annual cost in the US. I think, what is possible in terms of helping those people is really going to be amazing. And that really is I think, is an exciting thing to look forward to.
Cool. Just quickly, Alan, what are you really excited about?
So I'm super excited about the interface between wellness and healthcare. I call it self-care, and how technology is just going to change that game, as well as really serving the active aging consumer in a meaningful way. Not old people's toothpaste, but things that will really keep people in the game longer.
Great. And then Ken?
Well, first off, I would echo what Ellen said, but then I guess I would add, I'm excited about the idea of sort of what I'll call mass personalization, that, we can start to get personalized solutions, but to the groups, that they don't have to, you can get a normal thing or a normal device, and it can help you learn more about yourself individually, and it kind of, to self-empower people.
Great. Thank you guys so much. This has really been a fascinating conversation. There's so much going on in the chat. I wanted to ask more questions, but it's almost like other people are answering the questions. If you have a few minutes, panelists, and you want to engage or answer a couple of questions in the chat, please do. But again, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time today.
And thanks for bringing us together, Jennifer.
Yeah,
it's a great topic, and we need to do this more.
Good, guys. All right, good. Now with that, we're going to pass it over to Ava Asghari, and she is going to lead us right into the 3 amazing startups that we have for you today. Take it away, Ava.
Wonderful, thank you. And hello, everybody. My name is Ava Asghari, and I am the Senior Program Manager for Health here at Plug and Play. So first and foremost, I want to give a big thank you to our panelists and to Jennifer for graciously sharing so many valuable and insightful nuggets with us in that discussion. So thank you all. Now we're going to be moving on to the startup portion of our event. We have 3 awesome emerging startups that we're excited to showcase with you all. They all have case studies for aging that'll present to you all today. So each pitch will be about 4 minutes, followed by a 2-minute live Q&A where the startups will jump on the line and answer some of your burning questions. So if you have a question that comes up during the pitches, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. Make sure you also list the startup name in your question so I know who I can address them to. Also, if you find any startups to be interesting and you'd like to connect with them afterwards and learn more, we'll launch a poll where you can mark yes to an introduction to them. So with that, let's go to our first startup. We're excited to feature HeyRenee, a patient-centric personal health concierge designed to consolidate, coordinate, and connect all aspects of medical care. So HeyRenee, take it away.
I haven't been feeling too well. I have diabetes. My blood pressure's high. I really like my doctor, but he's so busy, it's hard to see him.
I'm Dr. Renee Dua, founder of HeyRenee, your personal care concierge. It's an incredibly easy to use SaaS platform that allows patients to coordinate, communicate, and connect during their healthcare journey. HeyRenee is the first ever digital health assistant specifically designed for older, underserved polychronic Americans. HeyRenee helps risk-bearing entities such as payers and hospital systems improve outcomes and reduce costs. Designed as an open platform, HeyRenee utilizes the entire digital health ecosystem to curate the perfect solution for each patient. HeyRenee is perfect for Juanita. She has multiple conditions, she needs help, and she doesn't want to bug her doctor. And frankly, she doesn't need to bug her doctor. She can use HeyRenee, she can find a pharmacy that delivers to her, she can find a nutritionist that will help her with a diet, she can work with a mental health professional to get therapy, she can do all these things on HeyRenee and stay well.
Hey, Renee, my blood pressure is 138/86.
Okay, I'll record that information.
HeyRenee will help you with doctor's appointments, mental health help, tracking your vitals, medication reminders, and urgent care. Unifying these previously disconnected aspects of a patient's healthcare journey is the best and most effective way to help millions of Americans with chronic disease. We've made this as easy as can be. Patients can use chat, they can use voice, and they can touch a screen to get the help they need when they need it. I've been a doctor for so many years, and I've seen the same thing year after year, which is I spend time with patients, they leave me, and they've forgotten what I've said. And they do not have the support they need so we can make a proper care plan that keeps them well and at home. Managing your healthcare is hard. HeyRenee makes it easy.
Wonderful. So thank you to the HeyRenee team. So if you'd like to connect with HeyRenee, feel free to fill out the poll on your screen. And while we do that, let's go ahead and invite Nick Desai from the HeyRenee team to turn on his video and unmute himself. We do have a few questions.
Great. I'm here, Ava, and thank you to you and to everyone for this incredible opportunity. You got to hear my better half in life and work, Dr. Renee Dua, and I'm here to answer questions.
Yes, of course. So I do have a few questions for you. The first being, what is your revenue model?
The revenue model is that our HeyRenee is free to patients, and our revenue models are twofold. We monetize the relationship with risk-bearing entities. If you are a value-based care provider and you're compensated on HEDIS measures, decreasing medical expenses, increased adherence with medication, improving vital signs, we help those entities achieve those objectives, and we share in the revenue, the upside of the value we create. The second revenue model is that we drive patients to partners in the digital health ecosystem, to a mental health services company, to a prescription delivery company, and we charge to bring them patients.
Wonderful. And how is HeyRenee competitively different?
The fundamental difference of HeyRenee is twofold. One, we are a patient-centric platform. What you hopefully saw in that video is that using Alexa voice, simple text messages, and a touch interface, you, the senior older person with these diseases, or your adult caretaker, who's often your son or daughter, can connect all aspects of your healthcare in a very easy, intuitive interface that's designed. Someone on the panel said you have to, make seniors care. You make them care by helping them, by delivering value, by giving them dignity, by letting them age in place, right? The second fundamental difference is we are an open platform in that we're not closing you in to say, oh, this is the mental health, this is the physical therapist, this is the pharmacy delivery service. Based on your insurance plan, Medicare Advantage plan, based on your PCP, and based on your needs, we work with the entire digital health ecosystem to curate a unified solution specifically for you. Those are the two fundamental differences.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. I apologize. I know that there's a Q&A. There's a question in the Q&A. If you wanted to stick around and answer that, you are welcome to, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next startup. So thank you, Nick, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Great. So next up, we have Redi Health. So Redi Health is a health management platform providing pharma's enrolled patients with a simplified and impactful lifestyle tools that promote daily engagement with one's total health. So let's play their tape.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Luke Buchanan. I'm a co-founder at Redi Health. And today we'll be going over how Redi impacts patients to take better control of their health journey. And that's through impactful health management tools and convenient connectivity to patient support services. Specifically, we'll be going over how Redi impacts those in age populations. But before we get into those specifics, let's talk about what Redi is. So Redi Health is laser focused on the concept of total health adherence. And that is simply that if we want patients to be more adherent, we can't focus on one medication or one condition. We actually need to build tools and solutions that focus on adherence overall. After all, for a patient and their caretaker, it's all one health journey. So the Redi platform is designed to just increase better engagement and management of the patient health journey, whether it's an aged individual or their caretaker. And we do this in two particular ways. And so those two pillars, as we call them, start with a portfolio of AI-driven, simplified daily health tools that are applicable for all medications and conditions that a patient might be on. The second pillar is integrating any support that might be very helpful for that patient. And so that is pharma patient support services and any clinical follow-up or support coming from a specialty pharmacy. And we'll get into what that looks like more specifically later. Now, it's important to remember that Redi is for all patients. However, let's talk about how Redi empowers aged populations specifically. There are two profiles for age populations that the Redi technology is very well positioned to address the issues of. And the first is the tech-enabled new entrant. And this is an individual that's newly aging into a more complex regimen of health. But these people are more likely to be comfortable with technology. Redi's solution for these individuals, the hyper-simplified tools that Redi offers today. These are intuitive, easy to understand, and give these patients the ability to take control of their health journey while also integrating the support and connectivity of patient support, specialty pharmacy, clinical follow-up that they might not really be familiar with but are now aging into needing for a beneficial health journey. The second profile here is for the more progressed caretaker-reliant individual. Those 75 plus have a very complex health profile and are now aging into being reliant on a caretaker for health management. Redi is built for caretakers. It has an option to sign up as a caretaker, which means we have a distinct focus on delivering patient support, health management of those that a loved one might be caring for directly to that individual. It's incredibly important for these individuals to be able to manage their loved one's health in a more succinct and aggregated way. And Redi is built specifically for that. Regardless of which persona is using the platform, one commonality is very true. It has to be so easy to use. And Redi is built for ease of use. So whether it's our various trackers or AI technology curator serving up education to a patient based off their health profile, all of these things are here to create significant engagement with one's health, which downstream helps increase engagement with any sort of integrated partnered support that is so beneficial to that patient, especially those in age populations. And so these tools have created an environment of significant engagement. But what do we do once we've created that environment? Well, to Redi, it's very simple. Integrate the support that is likely the most difficult for a patient to access today, and that is pharmaceutical patient support and specialty pharmacy clinical follow-up. Whether it be the examples I have listed here or others, essentially what you have is a dedicated management center of support for a patient right next to what they're using to manage all aspects of their health daily. This one-stop shop approach of high applicability and high impact is absolutely key for aged populations. So let's take a look at this in action. A patient comes in or their caretaker signs up as they would any other platform, inputting a code or having a unique link. They could sign up as a caretaker or not. I won't go through the full sign-up process, but right away we can see after that a patient drops into being able to manage their health in many different ways, whether that be education, exercise, their medications, symptom tracking, and being able to communicate that with a healthcare provider or a loved one. All very simple ways to manage one's health and create engagement. But right next to that, those tools that are so applicable, is the integrated brand support that is so helpful for that patient, or again, specialty pharmacy support. And whether it be integrated messaging, financial assistance, education to the patient specific to a therapeutic area, all of this combined with what a patient will use daily is key. And as aged populations and their caretakers become more comfortable with digital health, ensuring that support and daily health management are in one spot will absolutely become the standard of patient engagement. And that is a very basic overview of the Redi solution. If you're interested in seeing more and learning more, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. And if anybody in the audience is interested in connecting with Redi Health, a poll should have launched on your screen. So feel free to click yes or no to that. And while you do that, let's go ahead and invite Luke from the Redi Health team to answer a few questions.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So we have a few questions for you. The first is, how are patients introduced to the Redi platform?
Right. So we work through our partners in the pharmaceutical space or in the specialty pharmacy space to disseminate the Redi platform to patients as a service that they're sponsored on to manage their overall health, but also be able to access any sort of support that they'd have to go via phone or via fax in the more archaic way today. So we're changing the standard and allowing our partners to disseminate that very easily to patients.
Cool. And does a patient have to download the app to utilize the service?
They don't. And that's something I should have mentioned in my short 4 minutes, but especially within age populations, the barrier to download is a real issue and can be for the non-tech enabled patient. So Redi can be accessed via web browser at redi.health. All the features are the same. The notifications just come a variety of different methods than, say, a push notification. So patient does not have to download the platform to engage with it.
Wonderful. And last question is, what is your stance around the data you can provide to partners? And this is more so a question for some of the corporations on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So Redi does capture a base HIPAA consent on every patient and is very transparent with it. It's been successful thus far in testing that we've had. But we can provide a variety of real-world data, evidence, and insights to partners around each patient beyond just what the medication or condition and concern is. So that allows for a much more contemporary patient profile, which can lead to more contemporary business decisions.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. So thanks for tuning in and for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, we have a company called Cognitivity Neurosciences. So they are developing an AI platform for early detection of cognitive impairment, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. So let's go ahead and roll their tape.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sina Habibi, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cognitivity Neurosciences, spin out from Cambridge University, using latest neuroscience and artificial intelligence in order to detect neurodegeneration, in particular dementia. Dementia diagnosis begins with a cognitive test. These often pen and paper, memory-based tests are one of the major reasons why dementia is massively late and underdiagnosed. The tests are crude. They have significant biases in language, culture, and education, and patients get better at them when the test is repeated, which has been a major shortcoming of clinical trials. In line with this, we have invented a new technology, which is called Integrated Cognitive Assessment, or ICA for short. ICA uses information processing by brain as proxy for detecting impairment and neurodegeneration. The task is very simple. Patients have to categorize images with animal or not animal. They press on the right side if they see an animal, they press on the left side if they don't, as soon and as accurate as possible. And just like that, in the course of 5 minutes, we can detect cognitive impairments independent of culture, language, and education, without the need for healthcare professional, can be done fully remotely, and also without any learning bias. ICA's simplicity and efficiency makes it a powerful tool in delivery of new treatments, which is a major unmet need at the moment. For example, it was reported recently that almost 90 million people in the US think they're eligible for aducanumab, the drug that was recently approved by FDA for Alzheimer's, from which only 2.4 million people are actually eligible. We can use our technology on the web to screen mass population, detect and direct those who are at risk in order to receive full-on diagnosis. And post-diagnosis, when the treatment begins, we can use the technology for in a mobile format for patients to self-assess and monitor themselves. We believe ICA can be the de facto cognitive assessment for whenever this is required. And we've taken some major leaps towards that. The technology is fully validated, CE mark, and in clinical and commercial use within National Health Services of the United Kingdom. We partnered with InterSystem in order to integrate the technology within their EHR platform, which is one of the most used ones. And we expect to receive our FDA by October this year. And ahead of that, we're working on some other major partnerships. The technology is platform and can help the entire ecosystem. It can help drug discovery by being used as a sensitive cognitive endpoint. It can be used in phase 2, phase 3 without any disruption to the protocols. It can help delivery of new treatment, as mentioned earlier, and it can be used as adjunct with other diagnostic tools. We have shown, for example, that that ICA has excellent correlation with other biomarkers, such as fluid biomarkers, such as NFL, beta, and tau. It can be used as a beyond the pill approach. When patients are on a course of treatment, they can use the technology for self-assess and monitor themselves, which can improve patient engagement and outcome. And finally, it's not only for old and people who are at risk and patients, but also for younger people who want to monitor their brain health. We are also keen to work and build other solutions around the core capabilities of the technology. So if you have any ideas, please do get in touch. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And if you would like to, be introduced to Cognitivity, feel free to answer the poll that has launched on your screen. While we do that, I'd like to invite Sina from the Cognitivity Neurosciences team to answer a few questions. Sina, are you on the line?
Everyone.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. So we did get a Q&A question. They asked, can you please describe how you validated how your technology works?
With a lot of work, we've done a lot of clinical trials from proof of concept to large clinical trials. The last one, which gave us the regulatory approval, included 15 NHS trusts, all inside and outside London. And this is validated through multiple clinical trials.
Wonderful. And how does your technology use AI for improving detection?
Twofolds. One is through the core of the cognitive test. So every image that we show to the users is different, and it has certain characteristics. We play with mathematical characteristics of the images. Some of them, for example, are simpler images, such as a bear in the middle of a green background. It takes a short time for the brain to capture, analyze, and respond to that information, to that question, and it's less likely to make mistake. But we have another image, for example, a bear in the corner of a jungle. It takes longer to take the information analyzed and respond, and more likely to make mistakes. With this, we build a profile of responses that then we can compare with the normative data. We also build on top of that additional information on demographic, patient medical history, and the AI can basically help with classification alongside the cognitive test.
Wonderful. And last question, very quickly, what are other neurodegenerative conditions that can be detected by the ICA?
We have some excellent data, proof of concept on MS, which is fascinating. We haven't done the wealth of studies that we've done on dementia, but we've got some great initial readout on MS. We are doing pilot studies on ADHD, depression, and anxiety at the moment.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have today for questions. So thank you so much again for joining us. Very interesting.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Wonderful. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Great. Well, thank you to Sina from the Cognitivity Neurosciences team, Luke from Redi Health, and Nick from HeyRenee for joining us today. These were incredible and stellar startup presentations. We thank you all for tuning in and joining us. We're at the 1 minute mark. We just launched a post-webinar survey. Let us know what you thought. We always encourage our audience to give us feedback on these presentations, or if there's any topics you'd like to hear from, we would love to hear it. My email is on the screen, so if you have any questions or would like to get connected to anybody that you saw today, feel free to reach out to me directly. And with that, we wish you a great rest of your week and a great Wednesday, and we will see you all very soon. Thanks again, and take care.